This oil well valve seems to have been corroded, so the workers had to use a hammer to break it open. Because a spark was accidentally created from the pump, causing the oil well to explode instantly. Today, let's start a newly released American television series with me. This old man is almost 50 years old, but is still surrounded by many beautiful women. However, he's not interested in any of them. He just wants to focus on his work. Seeing his determination, the wealthy woman repeatedly expressed her confusion. That man's name is Tommy, the owner of an oil company. However, due to the drop in oil prices, the company went bankrupt, so Tommy switched to managing the oil field of another oil company. Although this position has a salary of $200,000 to $300,000 per year, compared to his huge debt, it's just a drop in the bucket. Therefore, Tommy can only work harder every day. He even proactively went to the oil field in Mexico to negotiate with local gangs. But as soon as he arrived, they showed no respect for Tommy at all. They constantly humiliated and interrogated him like a prisoner. But Tommy wouldn't be scared. Before coming here, he had investigated the situation of this oil field. The reason the gangsters occupied this place is because it's a remote land, and underground there's a huge drug processing facility. This is their pillar industry, so they can't easily leave. Tommy explained to them the pros and cons of handing this piece of land over to his company and promised to build a highway here by then. Then, the thugs could also use this highway to transport their goods more easily. This is definitely a win-win deal. With Tommy's proposal, the gang leader was clearly hesitant. It just seemed like he wanted more benefits. Tommy immediately saw what the other party was thinking. He then analyzed what would happen if he refused to cooperate. After taking a gamble, this gangster and the two sides reached an agreement. Soon after, this oil field was built, earning over $6.5 million in oil money every day. Tommy's abilities were highly valued by his boss. Everything seemed to be developing in a good direction, but a sudden phone call completely disrupted Tommy's life. The company's plane, which had been missing for over half a month, was suddenly hit by a tanker truck on the road. When the investigating police arrived, the plane was filled with concentrated cannabis extract. Upon hearing the news, Tommy rushed to the scene. Because the fire on the plane caused all the drugs to burn as well, causing creatures within a radius of several hundred meters to potentially pass out from inhaling it. Regarding this issue, Tommy knew everything clearly. After reaching an agreement with the local gang, they often borrowed the company's transportation equipment. Things like this happened frequently to Tommy, so after the plane went missing, he reported it to the Aviation Administration to avoid trouble, which is why Tommy didn't call the police. Otherwise, the investigation process would have kept the plane grounded for at least 2.5 years. As a result, such an incident has now occurred. While Tommy was having a headache about the plane, his ex-wife called. They had been divorced for many years. Now, his ex-wife had remarried a billionaire and was raising 2 children. And this phone call was to inform him that she was going on vacation with her husband, so their 17-year-old daughter and son would be temporarily managed by Tommy. Hearing the news, Tommy felt speechless. At 17, there's no need to worry about getting lost at all. However, his ex-wife seemed very serious. It turned out their daughter was dating a football player. Hearing that, Tommy realized that taking care of his daughter was really necessary. As for his son, it wasn't a problem. Cooper was just a middle school dropout. After that, Tommy arranged a job for him at the oil field, just needing to be careful and not cause trouble. Ainsley was spoiled by Tommy, who picked her up directly from the airport, while his son Cooper was sent directly to the oil fields to work as a regular worker. The only thing that made Tommy very unhappy was that Ainsley actually brought her boyfriend to the oil field with her. What was worse was that the relationship between the two seemed very intense. So Tommy made things difficult for this guy in every way. For example, he had to sleep on the sofa. But Tommy's intention caused dissatisfaction from his daughter. Tommy could only advise Ainsley sincerely. However, Ainsley completely ignored her old father's advice. Only after talking directly with her boyfriend did she really regret it. He acted like a pervert, and his language was extremely vulgar and obscene, making Ainsley feel very tired. And that guy didn't refuse any other girl who came near him. This made Ainsley feel extremely sad. She could only cry and complain to Tommy. When she woke up the next day, Ainsley's boyfriend had disappeared. This made her more certain that he was just a scumbag who scammed for money and sex. Tommy hadn't yet had time to be proud of his daughter escaping the scumbag when, at this moment, he encountered another problem. Tommy's roommate had just returned to their apartment. He didn't know there was another young girl here. When he heard the sound of running water in the bathroom and walked in, the scene startled them both. So Tommy quickly summoned his 2 roommates. He hoped everyone could temporarily maintain his daughter's privacy. Just after solving this small problem, Tommy received another piece of bad news. It turned out the oil field had just exploded. Tommy rushed to the scene. Seeing the fierce fire erupting from the oil well, Tommy quickly stepped forward and closed the valve. But because it was rusty, he could only use a hammer to slowly close it. As a result, he accidentally broke his own finger. Because the injury was very severe, A full recovery would take at least a year. Tommy was deep in debt, so he didn't have that much time. So he asked the doctor to perform an amputation on the injured finger. That way, it would only take a month to regain his ability to work. At that time, he learned that there was one survivor from the oil well explosion, and it was his son, Cooper. However, the young man's eardrum had been ruptured by the explosion's impact, and he was currently in the same hospital. So Tommy took the opportunity to visit his son, while also giving some warnings and suggestions so Cooper could leave the oil field. Tommy would reassign a safer job for his son. After all, he was lucky to survive the explosion this time. If it happened again, who could guarantee he would be lucky again? However, Cooper firmly refused his father's offer, because he had met many people while working at the oil field. It also gave rise to many inexplicable emotions. Or maybe it was because of the hot beauty at the nearby coffee shop. Or maybe he was fond of the people working here. Anyway, he wanted to stay here now and realize his dream. Cooper's persistence left Tommy silent. After dealing with Cooper's matter, he immediately called his boss to report the explosion. According to his investigation, it seemed the valve was corroded, so the workers had to use a hammer to break it open. Because a spark was accidentally created from the pump, causing the oil well to explode instantly. That was the reason for this accident. Although the reason was very simple and reasonable, if those reasons were reported to the authorities, those guys would definitely not agree at all. But that wasn't something Tommy needed to think about. That was something the boss had to handle. So, soon after, he sent an expert to Tommy's oil field. But now Tommy had something else to deal with. That was to report the incident to the families of those who died in the explosion. But what bothered Tommy the most was that 3 of the dead were from the same family. When Tommy looked at this family of 7 or 8, he really didn't know what to say. Even though the old woman was mentally prepared, when she heard that her husband and 2 sons had all died, she clearly couldn't accept this emotion. This also made Tommy feel ashamed, but he had no time to grieve. Soon after, the expert sent by the boss arrived. This was a young female lawyer named Rebecca. She had successfully handled many cases. As soon as she met Tommy, she wanted him to take her on a tour of the oil field explosion site. Seeing such a young woman, Tommy couldn't help but feel a little contemptuous, even thinking she wasn't professional at all. Of course, Rebecca was not a weak girl either, often scorning Tommy's dirty words and blaming the deaths of those workers on stupidity. In fact, with their annual salary of only $180,000, participating in such a dangerous job, even Tommy felt depressed. Even his own daughter didn't seem proud of her father's job. After all, only 2 types of people come to work at the oil field. Besides the dreamers, there are the losers. Most of the workers here were former criminals. Only the oil fields gave them jobs that still provided an income of over $10,000 a month. Therefore, Tommy hoped his son would quit halfway and stay away from this dangerous place. However, Cooper's resilience far exceeded his imagination. The first thing he did after being discharged from the hospital was to ask to find another team to work with. Although Tommy fully agreed, in actual operation, it was quite difficult, because the Mexicans here were very united. That explosion made these guys think that Cooper might have caused it. He was considered a troublemaker by the vast majority of Mexicans. Fortunately, things got better later. Among the many workers was a black foreman. This man was very reputable among the workers. When Cooper was being hassled by the Mexicans, he showed great enthusiasm and also had good fighting skills. This made the black foreman take a great liking to him, immediately inviting Cooper to join his team. With the protection of a black foreman, Cooper was able to stay and work at the oil field. The thing is, Tommy was facing a series of difficulties. The continuous accidents at the oil field also gave his boss a headache. The legal counsel suggested making Tommy a scapegoat. Otherwise, they would really be investigated and punished by the relevant agencies. Some of the boss's secrets might be discovered by the relevant departments. At that point, the entire company could be at risk of closing down. The advice from the legal counsel made the boss hesitate. Every company has a version of Tommy. Without such a person, the company cannot operate. Although he said that, inside he was still struggling with a difficult decision. This issue soon became known to Tommy. Furthermore, his roommate also discovered a problem with Rebecca coming to assist with the case. All the cases she had handled before were very little related to oil. So the roommate guessed that the boss was probably planning to make Tommy a scapegoat. Hearing the news, Tommy panicked a little. Finally, the roommate reminded him to rely on that relationship, which was to have Rebecca help clear his name. However, this was not easy. Tommy knew very well that in his first conversation with her, he had almost completely offended Rebecca. As soon as he met her, Tommy wanted to apologize. The result was that as soon as he opened his mouth, Rebecca talked back nonstop. Clearly, his apology plan had failed. Compared to his father, things were much better for Cooper. He was the only survivor of his team, so he attended his colleague's funeral. He was immediately surrounded by many Mexicans because they thought he had no right to be there. But with enough sincerity, Cooper still impressed the deceased mother. So he was invited to eat with everyone. Cooper couldn't eat spicy food, but still suppressed his cough to show respect for everyone. Clearly, Mexican food is extremely spicy. Ariana, the widow next to him, also gave a shy smile when she saw his expression. But when she immediately thought of her dead husband, she frowned again. She had heard her husband mention Cooper's name and knew that he was a good young man. So, Ariana took the initiative to talk to him. As the misunderstandings were cleared up, the two gradually became closer. Ariana even cried on Cooper's shoulder. And this scene was seen by other Mexicans. Manuel thought Cooper had bad intentions towards Ariana. On the other side, Tommy's first apology plan had failed. But not long after, Rebecca took the initiative to create an opportunity for him. The two were passing a wind farm, and Rebecca couldn't help but sigh, saying that green energy was beginning to push back the oil industry. However, Tommy immediately objected. Even the construction of these wind farms requires oil. Oil is convenient for all social classes. Every aspect of life now relies on oil to be maintained. Wind farms will never be able to completely replace oil. These words made Rebecca think. At this moment, Rebecca also felt that the sharp-tongued Tommy in front of her had a point. Suddenly, a rattlesnake appeared from the grass, scaring her so much that her whole body went numb. In the next moment, Tommy was like a hero. He used a hoe to take the rattlesnake's life on the spot. The hero rescues the damsel scene, though cliché, was very useful at this moment. Because of these small details, Rebecca began to respect Tommy more. Although the old man also had some flaws, it was hard to hide Tommy's brilliance just then. After Tommy took Rebecca back to her hotel, he returned in a cheerful mood. As soon as he opened the door, he was stunned by the sight before him. His ex-wife had appeared here. She had even gotten their daughter drunk. Tommy was very decisive, throwing his ex-wife into the pool without a moment's hesitation. But towards his beloved daughter, he was extremely gentle. It seems this personality was what caused his marriage to fall apart. Because Tommy's rude behavior didn't surprise Angela too much. Because she had been used to it for a long time. They hadn't seen each other for many years, so Angela also had many memories she wanted to share with Tommy. So that night, she wanted to rekindle her passion with him. But now Tommy had a lot on his mind, so he quickly found an excuse to turn her down. On Cooper's side, he had joined a new team and was ready to start work. But before he could get to the oil field, he was sought out by a Mexican looking for trouble. However, Cooper didn't take it seriously. But what Cooper didn't know was that something would happen soon after that would completely rewrite his life. On the other side, Tommy was discovering a problem while inspecting the oil well equipment. Due to continuous operation for a long time, the machine was showing signs of clogging. Initially, it was an oil well device that could produce 18 barrels of crude oil per day, but now it could only produce a maximum of 12 barrels. There were a total of 19 such devices plugged into the oil field, which would seriously affect the efficiency of oil recovery. So Tommy reported to his boss, hoping the equipment could be maintained. However, the boss said there was no rush yet. After all, the output was still 12 barrels per day, still maintaining production. If each device were to be repaired, it would require a minimum investment of $2 million. After some discussion, the two decided to maintain them one by one. Only after one could continue to produce oil could maintenance be carried out on the second device. Soon after, Cooper, as an apprentice worker, participated in this maintenance work. This could be considered Tommy's small help towards his son's dream. Besides that, Tommy was also in a state of exhaustion, because a few days later, the issue related to the plane would now go to court. This was the negotiation and mediation stage. The tanker company's request was for Tommy to provide corresponding compensation. But one request made Rebecca decide not to agree. The reason was very simple. This highway was built by Tommy's corporation. The tanker company was not at all qualified to use it. Therefore, not only would they not receive compensation, but they also had to pay for hitting the plane. But at this moment, the tanker company's lawyer made another surprising move, stating that they used the road under the verbal permission of the person in charge, Tommy. Seeing this situation, Tommy hesitantly admitted to the verbal permission. The situation was reversed in an instant, making Rebecca's mind spin. Suddenly, an idea flashed through her mind. Did they request an extended period of use? Besides closing the highway, Tommy immediately answered no. Immediately, Rebecca said the other party had exceeded the permitted usage time and had not applied for an extension. Therefore, they were not supposed to use the highway at all. The victory was guaranteed, helping Tommy avoid any compensation fees. After this incident, he also had to look at Rebecca in a different light. To celebrate this victory, Tommy took Rebecca to a local pub. But unexpectedly, Angela was also there. As soon as Tommy smelled something unusual, Angela and their daughter approached, starting to cause trouble for Rebecca. Seeing them, Tommy made a very generous invitation for the two of them to eat together. Rebecca, not knowing the other party's identity, readily agreed. As soon as they sat down, Angela began to brag about the love between her and Tommy. She didn't even notice Tommy's attitude beside her. Finally, unable to stand Angela, he left using work as an excuse. However, The smoke between Angela and Rebecca had not yet cleared. Rebecca had long been fed up with the other party's ostentation, so she found an opportunity to launch a counterattack. She mentioned that Angela already had another man, yet she still had the mood to appear in front of Tommy. This immediately angered Angela, but what Rebecca was saying was the truth. As an ex-wife, Angela had no right to interfere in Tommy's life. Perhaps it was due to her controlling nature that she wanted to provoke Rebecca. In the following days, Angela launched an even crazier attack on Tommy. Tommy still didn't know he was being targeted by his ex-wife because he was currently busy repairing the oil well. Looking at his son up there, his heart was full of anxiety. Even skilled workers were often injured at times like these. Not to mention Cooper was just an apprentice, making it even more dangerous. Even so, Tommy still tried to stand quietly below, watching his son. That night when he returned home, he saw his daughter crying on the couch. It turned out she knew about her parents' sad past. In the old days, Tommy was a very rich boss, but her mother resolutely left after he went bankrupt. She felt this was a shameful act. However, Tommy said things were not as complicated as Ainsley thought. Tommy and Angela were never in the same boat, which is why they divorced. Soothed by Tommy, Ainsley finally calmed down. But when he returned to his room, he found Angela crying there too. It turned out she wanted to get back together with Tommy again. Although Tommy didn't understand what was happening, this seemed like a good way to soothe things over. After a night of passion, Angela also lived in this shared villa. But this really made things difficult for the other roommates. They were just 3 single old men who just needed to work and rest every day, so they had almost nothing to worry about. But now there were more people, and they were all beautiful women. It made him feel extremely uncomfortable every day. Cooper's work was also going more and more smoothly. Ariana trusted him a lot. She even called Cooper to ask for help. Although a few days ago, those Mexicans had just threatened him, Cooper himself had no ill will. So he quickly arrived at Ariana's house. It turned out that a lot of documents had been sent to her house recently, but she didn't understand what they were, so she hoped Cooper could help. After a brief review, he found that there were many different bills, including various tax deductions for a home loan and a car loan. Hearing this, Ariana frowned. Although her husband had left some assets, at most it was only enough for half a year, so she planned to sell the car to reduce the pressure of paying off the debt. Besides that, Cooper also discovered from a bill from Ariana's husband before he died. It was a retirement insurance worth $400,000. Just by collecting it when the time comes, it would be able to help Ariana get through this difficult time. At this moment, it was time for Ariana to breastfeed, so Cooper wisely left the room. He accidentally saw that the yard hadn't been cleaned for a long time, so he took the initiative to mow the lawn in Ariana's yard. As a result, this scene was seen by the Mexicans again. Manuel immediately rushed out of his car, ready to teach Cooper a lesson. The noise disturbed Ariana inside the house. She had to quickly come out to mediate the dispute between the two. Seeing Manuel trying to insult Cooper made her very angry. So she immediately turned around and kissed him in front of Manuel, then demanded that Manuel get out of there and not interfere with their private affairs. After this incident, Cooper also became tougher, warning Manuel not to point a gun at him ever again. Manuel could only leave bitterly because he couldn't do anything to him. But clearly, this issue would not stop there. On Tommy's side, he finished a night of love with Angela and went to work as usual. Angela was very critical of this. After all, that was the reason the two of them grew further and further apart in the first place. She even directly video called Tommy to prove her innocence. He also asked the surrounding workers to testify for themselves. As a result, Angela even showed off her chest, stunning them. Tommy could only feel helpless about this. At the same time, the lawyer Rebecca was also busy with her work. Many people died from the explosion, so the company needed to provide appropriate compensation. Each person had $400,000 in retirement insurance. Following normal procedures, the company first needed to send that money to the families of the deceased, then pay another pension. Tommy's corporate finance roommate thought $250,000 per person was more appropriate, because in this case, the company would be compensating millions of USD. Hearing this number, Rebecca also became confused. She proposed a plan to sign a trap contract with the families of the deceased. Then, each person would only have to be compensated $250,000. Hearing this, Nin immediately objected. But Rebecca didn't care and insisted on doing it this way. Although the problem with the tanker company had been resolved, that plane had still not been dealt with. There were a lot of hemp extracts inside. All of it was the property of the local gangsters. Now that everything had been destroyed, the gang leader would naturally cause trouble for Tommy. Facing his extortion, although Tommy was very worried inside, he remained extremely tough on the outside. Even the boss who wanted to take Tommy's life on the spot didn't dare to act. But if you can't do it openly, you can do it secretly. He threatened that if his business was exposed, Tommy would also suffer the consequences. When they left, the black foreman was the first to ask how to ensure their safety from the gang's harassment. Obviously, Tommy couldn't answer this question because he couldn't even protect himself. When he returned home, he saw that the inside had completely changed. It turned out Angela had used her rich husband's money to redecorate the entire house. But Tommy had no intention of paying attention to this. Even the dishes prepared by Angela all had the same flavor. This made her feel very disappointed, and she ran into the kitchen in anger. Tommy also realized he was wrong and quickly chased after her to apologize. It's just that their son Cooper was not so lucky. Because of the provocation of Manuel during the day, he had to suffer his revenge that night. Of course, Tommy still didn't know what was happening. At this time, Angela had finally decided to divorce her current husband. So the next day, Tommy waited for her at the airport. However, halfway there, he received a notice that thugs had caused trouble at the oil field last night. Various types of steel pipes had been mixed together. So Tommy immediately rushed to the scene. The result was that he accidentally saw a tragic scene. Such a bloody scene made Angela freeze in fear on the spot. Tommy quickly contacted his boss to ask how to handle it. Unlike what had happened before, this time it was trouble caused by local gangs. If they weren't eliminated, there would still be other troubles later. And the amount of money they demanded was something a company couldn't afford to pay tens of millions of dollars for. So Tommy proposed to his boss to arrange for the Drug Enforcement Administration to handle them. As for Angela, her situation was even worse. Initially, she wanted to divorce by agreement and share some assets with her current husband. But unexpectedly, he had arranged for 2 professional lawyers. When he learned that Angela came here to ask for a divorce, he quickly took out some prepared agreements and some evidence of Angela's infidelity. According to relevant laws, the cheater would leave empty-handed. Not only did Angela not receive any assets, but she was also forced to return what her husband had given her over the years. Although she wanted to argue, it was clear she could do nothing. In the end, Angela reluctantly signed the divorce papers. The next moment, many young girls entered the villa. Clearly, everything was arranged by the rich husband. Angela was very angry about this, but was completely helpless. The young girls even took over Angela's bed, making her even angrier. Before leaving, she could only steal 2 precious bottles of red wine, then drove a Bentley away from there. At this moment, she only wanted Tommy's comfort. But when she called, there was no answer. It turned out Tommy was driving very fast to the hospital, because not long ago, he received news that his son was seriously injured. He was still not out of danger. At this time in the hospital, Ainsley had been here for a long time. She also met Ariana and guessed that this was Cooper's girlfriend. But when she caught Ariana using a breast pump, it made Ainsley even more confused. Just then, the nurse announced that the patient was awake, so she dismissed her curiosity. Tommy went to the hospital, saw Ariana there, and had a vague guess. And when he heard Cooper's account, he also understood the cause of the incident. Although Tommy's expression didn't change emotionally on the surface, the anger in his heart could no longer be suppressed. As soon as he left the hospital, he immediately summoned many of his men to the culprit's house. But after the punishment, it was still not enough to soothe Tommy's anger. Soon after, the ringleader, Manuel, was also brought here. Tommy angrily informed him that he had arranged for a 30-year prison sentence. Besides that, if Manuel returned to this place, he would put him back in prison. As soon as he finished speaking, the police car was at the scene. Even though he had resolved everything, Tommy was still very worried because those thugs were still quietly waiting for an opportunity to punish him. Perhaps for Cooper's safety, he should be sent elsewhere. But after Cooper was discharged from the hospital, he did not return to his original residence. Instead, he went to stay at Ariana's house temporarily. This situation gave Tommy a headache. If he continued to let his son go on like this, he would definitely not be able to control him. But he really didn't have much energy left to deal with things like this anymore. Not long after, the drug lord arranged for people to cause trouble again. Although they had the advantage in numbers, they were still quickly driven away. But this seriously affected the work efficiency of the oil field. They had to deal with this group of thugs as soon as possible. So Tommy directly contacted his boss, Monty, hoping he could send mercenaries from the security company to help deal with these troublesome drug lords. Apart from work, his daughter and wife also didn't make Tommy worry. Since Angela divorced her husband, she had been living here completely with Tommy. She also often took Ainsley to the gym or to a nursing home to serve. In fact, it was to tell them about her many years of marriage experience. Their community service quickly became so popular that the nurse at the nursing home took the initiative to invite them both. This gave Tommy no reason to stop the mother and daughter. All he could do was try to keep an eye on Ainsley and give her his own opinions. One day, Angela suddenly discovered that her daughter's mobile phone location was not moving. She guessed that Ainsley was most likely doing that. Hearing this, Tommy immediately went out to find her. Tommy's reaction even made Angela jealous. She was curious whether he loved himself or his daughter more. Hearing this question, Tommy was speechless and could only remain silent. Of course, Tommy didn't have time to worry about that because he just wanted to find his daughter quickly. At the same time, Ainsley was in a car with a man, ready for a little excitement. But just moments later, the guy was scared to death. Tommy had found them and taught him a lesson. but Ainsley was quite dissatisfied with this. She said that she was an adult and it was their free will. Tommy should not interfere. But no matter what Ainsley said, he did not agree. Just like that, the two returned home in silence. Because of what happened last night, Tommy was always distracted. Combined with his recent fatigue, it put him in a very bad state. His actions were also much rougher, completely unable to meet Angela's needs. This made her very angry. Just as he was getting an earful from his wife, his roommate came to watch the fun, which made Tommy even more unhappy. But what worried him the most was his daughter Ainsley. Since last night, she had always been very dissatisfied with Tommy's behavior. At that moment, Monty suddenly called, scolding him fiercely. It turned out that Rebecca had just negotiated compensation with the families of the victims of the oil explosion. She offered a price of $500,000. But unexpectedly, Cooper was also there. He demanded to double the price to $1 million. No matter how much Rebecca threatened him, he still expressed his determination. So, Rebecca reported this matter to the company's owner. Monty was very angry when he found out. That's why the boss called Tommy directly. The anger kept attacking him. As soon as he hung up, Monty had to be hospitalized for a heart condition. However, Tommy still didn't know that. Although he was in a good mood, he was busy with something else. The drug gang had come to cause trouble on his own territory again. Fortunately, this time the mercenaries from the security company had arrived. Tommy decided to teach that drug gang another harsh lesson. This bombing made him feel much better. Only then did he have the energy to deal with his son's matter. That night, Tommy went to Ariana's place. He seriously discussed the issue of Cooper staying there, saying that he and Ariana were not from the same world. Specifically, they couldn't be together. Tommy spoke from many different aspects, and what he said was actually true. After Tommy left, Ariana had a heated argument with Cooper about what had just happened. Although Cooper did not agree with what his father said, Tommy still couldn't let go of his son. He also couldn't control that drug lord. Because of what happened before, he was very angry and called to threaten Tommy. Tommy immediately thought of his wife and daughter. They often went out, so they would be an excellent target for them. When Tommy had just returned home, the scene in front of him was unacceptable. Ainsley had actually brought her new boyfriend home. Tommy wanted to end this matter, but was stopped by Angela. It was clear that the two had completely different educational philosophies. In the end, neither could convince the other. Tommy hoped to get help from his roommate. But as for Tommy's chaotic family, they didn't want to get involved. In desperation, Tommy could only mention the drug lord's threat to get Angela and the others to be careful. However, she paid no attention to Tommy's reminder. After that, he received a call and learned that Monty's situation was not optimistic. Tommy immediately rushed to the hospital where he was being treated. At this time, Monty looked very gaunt, no longer as energetic as before. Monty said he didn't have much time left. Tommy was the most trustworthy person. If he didn't make it, he would let Tommy take over the company's business. On Cooper's side, a conflict had arisen between the two. He quit his job at the oil field and decided to start a business based on the knowledge he had learned during this time. Cooper set his sights on a piece of land. He planned to establish his own oil empire from here. After that, he found the owner of the land and then used his most sincere words and a generous promise of benefits, finally reaching a cooperation agreement with the other party. At the same time, Tommy returned to his residence. He found that Ainsley's new boyfriend was still here, which made him even more annoyed. Another thing happened soon after that made Tommy decide to get rid of him. At dinner time, Angela, as usual, prepared delicious food for everyone. But there was clearly something wrong with the way this guy looked at her. He even said provocative words. It always made Tommy feel that this guy had no good intentions. But before he could figure out a solution, he received a call that Monty had suddenly passed away at the hospital. He had worked hard his whole life, and in the end, he had no family by his side. This scene made Tommy feel many things. However, he couldn't indulge in sadness. According to Monty's wishes, he had to shoulder the burden of the oil company from his lawyer. Before the incident happened to Monty, he had a deal worth hundreds of millions. Now Tommy is the chairman of an oil company. Should this cooperation continue? This depends on him to make a new decision. After Tommy checked the relevant information, he saw that this deal really brought good results. But the project's risks were also very high. Once something unexpected happened, the company would be completely bankrupt within a year. Such an important decision, Tommy dared not make it himself. He decided to ask Monty's wife, Cammy. He informed her of all the specific information of the transaction, especially the risks of this investment. Then, Tommy gave her some advice as a friend, which was to sell this thing right now. Her children would never have to work. Indeed, if she did as Tommy said, that is, if Cammy entrusted all her current assets, her children would not have to worry about food and clothing. After Cammy hesitated for a long time, she decided to continue the project, but would leave the detailed implementation to Tommy. This was the trust she placed in her husband's friends. Seeing this situation, Tommy said nothing more. He immediately contacted Rebecca for this legal expert to withdraw from the negotiations. Soon after, the two met and talked about the project. In short, it was an oil company in an oil field that was suspected to be depleted. According to the agreement, they were preparing to exploit that area with new technology. They just needed to try to lower the partner's asking price, allowing the company to recover its costs as quickly as possible. According to the project's regulations, at least over 100 oil wells would be installed there. The price of each oil well was tens of millions. Although Rebecca was very unhappy with oil energy, thinking that this technology seriously harmed the environment. But she couldn't change Tommy's decision. She didn't even bother to look at Tommy as he left. For the rest, the financial manager, Nan, would connect with Rebecca. Tommy had just left there not long ago when a car was speeding towards him from behind. Then another car came from the front, blocking all his paths. Although he realized that something was wrong, he couldn't do anything. When the group of people got out of the car, it was the local drug lord. They clearly came for revenge for the previous bombing. With their large numbers, Tommy was quickly beaten up. Then, he saw with his own eyes these guys blow up an oil well worth tens of millions of USD, instantly turning it to dust. Tommy was very angry, telling the boss that he was in big trouble. However, he still didn't know that Tommy had become the chairman of the company. He only saw him as an oil field manager, so he didn't take this matter seriously. He didn't even intend to let Tommy go, instead taking him back to the base and torturing him madly. Tommy had to wear a sack over his head and was tortured painfully. But this was just an appetizer. The drug lord had someone pour gasoline on Tommy, ready to burn him alive. But at this moment, gunshots rang out from outside the door. Although Tommy couldn't see who was coming, he could guess their identity. The day's boss went out to check and was shot dead instantly. It turned out the person who came here was his boss. After that, he very politely untied Tommy and lit him a cigarette. He said that these were all decisions of his subordinates. Now he had been personally shot dead by him. Therefore, he hoped Tommy could overlook these mistakes. Seeing the gang boss's attitude, Tommy was very satisfied. Having heard this, the gang boss also breathed a sigh of relief. Because if Tommy really wanted to take revenge himself, the American oil tycoons would also act together. That would bring in the Drug Enforcement Administration, which meant that the drug traffickers would lose their livelihood. When Tommy left here, he didn't want to make things worse. So he contacted his roommate to take him home. At this time, everyone was already asleep. Tommy didn't want to disturb them, so he decided to spend the night on the sofa. But what Tommy didn't know was that Angela had been up all night worrying about him. Seeing Tommy's miserable state, she unconsciously burst into tears. But Tommy didn't want his family to worry, so he just lied and said he was in a car accident. But Angela had been with Tommy for many years. How could she not understand Tommy's personality? Even so, she didn't want to say more and didn't ask any more questions. The night passed quickly. After last night's incident, Tommy knew that nothing could shake him anymore. Even when he saw that kid and his daughter walk out of the room, Tommy had a lot to say, but in the end, he chose to remain silent. The current situation was really not suitable for continuing to take care of anything. Tommy could only go outside quietly to smoke and think about what to do next. The video also ends here, a film that shows the current state of all levels of the US oil industry. If you like this type of video, I highly recommend watching the original movie. Thank you all for watching. Please leave a like and a subscription if you like this video. See you guys in the newest videos.